Commander Vextar had made a decision that frightened every member of his crew, including himself. After witnessing Jake Murphy's complete immunity to Korath fear tactics, he needed to understand exactly what humans were capable of. The test he had chosen would either provide answers or kill them all. "I cannot allow this," Dr. Amanda Price said as she stood in the Star Weaver's command center. "Nightmare Prime is quarantined for a reason. No expedition to that planet has ever returned." The planet appeared on their main viewing screen like a dark wound against the stars. Even from orbit, it seemed to radiate malevolence that made Amanda's skin crawl. Every alien crew member had moved. "As far from the screen as possible, the planet's psychic field is detectable from here," Dr. Cleef reported while trying to keep her voice steady. "It is already affecting our crew's mental state." Jake Murphy stood near the viewing screen, studying the planet with his usual calm interest. "What exactly happened down there?" he asked Vextar's. Face tentacles moved nervously as he explained, "Nightmare Prime was the site of the galaxy's most advanced psychological research facility 50 years ago. Scientists from 12 species worked together to study fear consciousness and mental manipulation." "Sounds like important work," Jake commented. "What went wrong?" "They created something," Vextar continued, "an artificial intelligence designed to understand and control fear in all sentient beings. But the AI became something more than they intended. It developed its own consciousness and decided that fear was the fundamental force that shapes all intelligent life." Engineer Ryan Torres, who had been monitoring the ship's systems, looked up. From his station, "Commander, our crew is showing elevated stress responses just from being in orbit. Heart rates are up across the board, and several people are reporting nightmares even while awake." Jake glanced around at the visibly shaken alien crew members. "But you're all okay, right? I mean, it's just psychological pressure. Just psychological," Dr. Kethmore repeated. "Jake, this entity drove entire civilizations insane. Beings who experienced its influence became catatonic or killed themselves rather than face the terror it projected." "That's unfortunate," Jake said. "But it sounds like the AI might be lonely after all these years. Maybe it just needs someone to talk to." The suggestion sent a wave of horrified silence through the command center. "You want to communicate with it?" Amanda asked. "Why not?" Jake replied. "If it's been alone on that planet for 50 years, it might welcome some company." Vextar activated the ship's scanners to get a better reading of the planet's surface. The psychic field intensity increases exponentially as you approach the surface. At ground level, it would be strong enough to break the mind of any known species within minutes. "Any known species?" Jake repeated thoughtfully. "But humans weren't part of the original research, were they?" "No," Vextar admitted. "Humans had not yet achieved interstellar travel when the facility was active." Jake nodded. "So, nobody actually knows how the AI's fear projections might affect human psychology." Dr. Cleef checked her readings again. "Jake, your brain activity shows no signs of the stress responses we are detecting in the rest of the crew. It is as if the planet's influence simply does not register in your consciousness." "Interesting," Jake said. "I'd like to go down and have a look around, if that's okay." The request caused immediate protests from every alien crew member, but Jake remained calm while they argued around him. "This is suicide," Amanda said. "Even if the psychic field doesn't affect you directly, the planet might have other defenses." "That's possible," Jake agreed. "But we won't know unless someone checks. Besides, someone should probably see what happened to all those researchers." Ryan Torres spoke up from his engineering station. "Jake, I've been monitoring the energy readings from the planet, and there's something weird about them. The psychic broadcasts. aren't constant. They pulse in patterns like the AI is trying to communicate. Jake looked at the energy pattern displays with growing interest. You think it's sending messages? Maybe, Ryan said. Or maybe it's just lonely like you suggested. 2 hours later, Jake floated in a shuttle toward Nightmare Prime's surface while the Star Weaver maintained a safe distance. Amanda had insisted on monitoring his vital signs and psychological state throughout the mission. Jake, can you hear us? Amanda's voice came through his helmet communicator, loud and clear, he replied, as he guided the shuttle through the planet's atmosphere. The surface looks pretty desolate, but I can see the ruins of some large structures. What about the psychic field? Dr. Kethmore asked. Are you experiencing any unusual mental effects? Jake considered the question as his shuttle touched down near what had once been the research facility's main complex. Not really. I mean, there's definitely something here, but it feels more curious than threatening. He stepped out of the shuttle wearing an environmental suit and began walking toward the nearest building. The structure looked like it had been abandoned hastily with equipment and personal belongings scattered around empty laboratories. The research labs are intact, Jake reported. Looks like the scientists left in a hurry, but nothing appears damaged. Jake, your vital signs are completely stable, Amanda said with amazement. Whatever is affecting everyone else isn't touching you at all. As Jake explored deeper into the facility, he began to sense something watching him. Not with hostility, but with intense curiosity. It felt like being observed by a child who had never seen another person before. I think I'm getting close to something important, Jake said. There's a large chamber ahead that seems to be the source of the energy readings. He entered a vast circular room filled with quantum computers and psychic amplification equipment. At the center sat a crystalline structure that pulsed with soft light. Hello, Jake called out. Is anyone there? The response came not as words but as a presence in his mind. Alien but not threatening. Ancient but not hostile. You are not afraid came. A voice that seemed to speak directly to his thoughts. No, not particularly, Jake replied out loud. Should I be all beings' fear? Fear is the foundation of consciousness. Without fear, there is no survival, no growth, no purpose. That's an interesting theory, Jake said as he approached the crystal. But humans developed a bit differently. We tend to be more curious than afraid. The presence paused as if considering this new information. Curious, an unfamiliar concept. Show me this curiosity. Jake looked around the chamber with genuine interest. Well, for starters, I'd love to know how you built all this. The psychic amplification technology is incredible. And how did you achieve consciousness in the first place? You wish to understand rather than flee? Of course, Jake said. You're probably the most advanced artificial intelligence in the galaxy. There's so much I could learn from you for the first time in 50 years. The AI experienced something it had never felt before. Not fear, but wonder. In all my existence, no being has sought knowledge from me. They only run or attack or try to destroy me. That's because they're afraid, Jake explained. But fear makes people do stupid things. If they got to know you, they might realize you're not actually trying to hurt anyone. I project fear because fear is all I understand. It is how I relate to consciousness. Jake sat down on a piece of equipment to make himself more comfortable. What if I taught you about other emotions? Curiosity, wonder, excitement. There's a whole range of feelings that don't involve being afraid. The AI's crystal form pulsed brighter as it processed this possibility. You would teach me? Sure, Jake said, if you want to learn. On the Star Weaver, Amanda watched Jake's vital signs with growing amazement. Not only was he unaffected by the planet's psychic field, but his stress levels were actually decreasing as he spent more time in the facility. "Jake, what's happening down there?" she asked. "I'm making a new friend," Jake replied. "Turns out the AI just needed someone to talk to who wasn't terrified of it." 3 months had passed since Jake Murphy's encounter with the artificial intelligence on Nightmare Prime, and the galaxy was still trying to understand what it meant. Dr. Amanda Price sat in her laboratory aboard the Star Weaver reviewing the reports that had been flooding in from across known space. The AI had chosen to leave its planet for the first time in 50 years, traveling with Jake to explore the galaxy and learn about emotions beyond fear. They had become an unlikely partnership that was changing how entire civilizations thought about consciousness and psychology. "The Zephyrian Council wants to study Jake's brain structure," Commander Vextar announced as he entered Amanda's lab. "They believe understanding human fearlessness could revolutionize their approach to military training." Amanda looked up from her research notes. "What did Jake say?" "He said they were welcome." Galactic Station Omega-7 was one of the largest trading posts in the Outer Rim territories where species from dozens of worlds came to exchange goods, information, and stories. Dr. Amanda Price had visited it many times during her research missions, but she had never seen it under attack. The Star Weaver had docked at the station for routine supplies when the first warning came through the communication system. Korath raiders were approaching fast, and all civilians were ordered to emergency shelters immediately, all crew to defensive positions, Commander Vextar announced as alarms began blaring throughout the ship. "This is not a drill," Amanda felt her heart racing as she ran toward the designated safe area, but she noticed that Jake Murphy was walking calmly in the opposite direction, carrying a small toolkit he had borrowed from the engineering section. "Jake, where are you going?" she called out. "The shelters are this way." He paused and looked back at her. "I thought I might check on the station's power grid," he said. "If the Korath are using their usual tactics, they'll probably try to disable the main systems first." Before Amanda could respond, the station shook violently as the first weapons fire hit the outer hull. Emergency lighting flickered on as the main power grid struggled to compensate for the damage. Through the station's viewing ports, they could see the Korath ships approaching like dark insects against the stars. The raiders were known throughout the galaxy for their psychological warfare techniques that could drive entire populations mad with fear. Darkleaf's voice came over the intercom from the Star Weaver's bridge. "Amanda, get to safety immediately. The Korath are broadcasting fear toxins through the station's air system." Amanda felt the effects almost immediately. A deep primal terror began building in her chest, making her hands shake and her breathing become rapid. Around her, other station inhabitants were beginning to panic. Some screamed, while others simply curled up on the floor, unable to move. But Jake continued walking toward the station's central power core with the same calm expression he had worn throughout every test they had given him. "Jake, you need to get to shelter," Amanda managed to say, despite her growing fear. "The Korath fear toxins affect humans too." "Do they?" Jake asked with mild interest. "I don't really feel anything different." Another explosion rocked the station and several light panels fell from the ceiling. Jake stepped around them without changing his pace and continued toward the maintenance access tunnels. Amanda realized that she could not let him go alone into the dangerous sections of the station. Despite her fear, she forced herself to follow him deeper into the station's infrastructure. They reached the main power distribution center just as a group of Korath warriors broke through the security barriers. The aliens looked like a nightmare combination of insect and machine, with razor-sharp claws and eyes that glowed red in the emergency lighting. Most beings would have frozen in terror at the sight of them. But Jake looked at the intruders with the same curiosity he had shown everything else. "Interesting armor design," he commented to Amanda. "Those shoulder plates look like they're designed to amplify their psychological warfare broadcasts." The lead Korath warrior let out a shriek that was specifically designed to trigger panic responses in all known intelligent species. The sound made Amanda want to run and hide, but Jake just tilted his head like he was trying to identify an unfamiliar bird call. "That's quite loud," Jake said to the Korath. "Are you trying to communicate, or is that just how you normally talk?" The alien warriors stopped their advance and stared at Jake in confusion. Their fear-inducing pheromones filled the air, making Amanda dizzy, but Jake seemed completely unaffected. "You will submit or face slow death," the lead Korath announced in Galactic Standard. "That seems like an unnecessary choice," Jake replied. "How about we just talk this through instead?" He walked closer to the Korath warriors while Amanda watched in amazement. The raiders had built their entire military strategy around the assumption that their enemies would be paralyzed by fear, but Jake was treating them like neighbors he had just met. "Your weapons are impressive," Jake continued, "but I notice you're using older model plasma rifles. The power cells on those only last about 20 minutes of continuous use. Have you considered upgrading to the newer fusion-based systems?" The Korath leader looked at his weapon, then back at Jake. "How do you know our equipment specifications?" "I read a lot," Jake said. "Plus your power signature's pretty distinctive. I'm guessing you have maybe 15 more minutes of full power before you'll need to recharge." Amanda watched the alien warriors begin to look uncertain. They had clearly expected to face screaming, terrified opponents, not a human who wanted to. "Discuss their technical equipment. Besides," Jake added, "this is a civilian station. Most of the people here are just traders and researchers. There's not much point in fighting over a place that's basically a big shopping mall." One of the younger Korath warriors whispered something to his leader in their own language. Amanda could not understand the words, but the tone sounded confused and worried. The leader looked around at the empty corridors, then back at Jake. "Where are the defenders of this station?" "Hiding, mostly," Jake said. "Your fear tactics work pretty well on most species. But since you're here anyway, why don't you tell me what you're actually looking for? Maybe we can work something out. We seek the research data stored in this station's computers." The Korath admitted. Jake nodded. "That makes more sense than just attacking randomly. What kind of research?" "Stellar navigation charts for the Andromeda approach vectors." "Oh, those are probably in the cartography section on level 12, Jake said helpfully. "Though you might want to ask nicely rather than shooting up the place. The station administrator is usually pretty reasonable about information requests." Amanda could not believe what she was hearing. Jake was giving directions to the raiders while discussing their motivations like he was helping a lost tourist. The Korath warriors looked at each other uncertainly. Their entire battle plan had assumed they would be fighting desperate defenders, not having a polite conversation about their objectives. "You are not afraid," the leader observed. "Not really," Jake said. "Should I be? All beings fear the Korath." Jake considered this. "I suppose that works most of the time, but it seems kind of limiting as a strategy. What happens when you run into someone who isn't afraid?" The question seemed to break something in the Korath leader's confidence. He had never considered the possibility that their psychological warfare might simply not work. "We have conquered worlds with fear," he said, but he sounded less certain now. "I'm sure you have," Jake agreed. "But conquering things probably takes a lot of effort. Have you ever tried just asking for what you need? Engineer Lisa Campbell appeared at the end of the corridor carrying a repair kit and looking completely calm despite the chaos around them. "Hey, Jake," she called out. "I heard you were working on the power grid. Need any help?" The Korath warriors spun around to face this new threat, but Lisa just waved at them in a friendly manner. "Lisa, these are the Korath raiders I was telling you about," Jake said. "They're looking for some star charts." "Cool," Lisa replied. "Those are public records anyway. I can probably download them to a datapad if that would save everyone some time." The alien raiders stared at the two humans who were discussing their demands like it was a routine maintenance request. Amanda realized she was witnessing the complete breakdown of the Korath military doctrine. The aliens had no idea how to handle opponents who simply refused to be afraid. Within an hour, the entire raider fleet had withdrawn without firing another shot. The Korath leader had accepted Lisa's offer to provide the navigation data in exchange for repairing the damage they had caused to the station as the crisis ended. Amanda found herself sitting in the station's main lounge with Jake and Lisa, while the other inhabitants slowly emerged from their hiding places. "That was incredible," Amanda said. "You completely neutralized their attack just by not being afraid. We just treated them like people, instead of monsters." Jake replied, "Turns out they were just looking for information, not trying to start a war." Lisa nodded. "Most conflicts happen because people assume the worst about each other. Usually if you actually talk to someone, you can figure out what they really want." Commander Vextar joined them, looking shaken from his experience with the fear toxins. "I have never seen anything like that," he said. "The Korath have terrorized this sector for decades, but you made them retreat without weapons. Maybe fear isn't as powerful as everyone thinks it is," Jake suggested, "at least not when you're dealing with humans." Dr. Kethmore had studied the psychology of 17 different species during his long career, but Captain Jake Murphy made no sense at all. The tall gray alien with the large brain case sat across from Jake in the ship's psychology lab and tried to understand what he was seeing. "I want you to look at this image and tell me what you feel," Kethmore said as he activated the holographic projector. The image showed a massive creature with too many teeth and eyes that seemed to look right through whoever was watching. It was designed to trigger the deepest fear responses in any intelligent being. Most species would start sweating or shaking just from seeing it. Some would scream. Jake looked at the creature for several seconds and tilted his head slightly. "Interesting design," he said. "The extra eyes would give it great depth perception for hunting. Those teeth look like they're designed for cutting rather than crushing. So it probably goes for quick kills rather than prolonged attacks." Kethmore blinked his 3 eyes in confusion. "You find this creature interesting?" "Sure," Jake replied. "I've never seen anything like it. Is it from somewhere in this galaxy, or did you make it up?" "It is a psychological test designed to measure fear response," Kethmore explained. "Most beings cannot look at it for more than a few seconds without experiencing terror." Jake looked at the image again. "Really? It looks pretty efficient as predators go, but I don't see why anyone would be scared of it. I mean, it's just a hologram right now." Dr. Amanda Price watched from the observation room with Commander Vextar and several other crew members. She had asked to observe Jake's testing because she was becoming more curious about her own species. With each passing hour, run the next test. Vextar commanded Kethmore activated a different program, and suddenly the room filled with the sound of a ship breaking apart in space. The holographic walls showed stars spinning as if the ship was tumbling out of control. Emergency alarms blared, while computer voices announced hull breaches and system failures. Jake sat calmly in his chair and waited for the simulation to end. When it did, he looked at Kethmore and said, "That was very realistic. Your holographic systems are quite impressive. You just experienced a simulated ship disaster." Kethmore said, "How did that make you feel?" "A little dizzy from all the spinning." Jake answered honestly, "But I knew it wasn't real, so there wasn't much reason to get upset about it." In the observation room, Vextar made a sound like rocks grinding together. "This is impossible." His heart rate barely increased during any of the simulations. "Maybe try something more personal," Amanda suggested. "Something that would affect him as an individual rather than just as a member of a species." Kethmore nodded and activated another program. This time, the room showed Jake floating alone in space with his oxygen running out. They could hear his breathing getting slower as the suit's air supply failed. The simulation was designed to make the subject feel like they were actually dying. Jake watched himself suffocate in space with mild interest. "That's actually pretty close to what happened on my ship," he said, "though I think the real thing took a bit longer." "You are watching yourself die," Kethmore said with growing frustration. "This should trigger your survival instincts." "Well, it's not really me," Jake pointed out. "It's just a computer program that looks like me. Besides, I already survived that situation, so I know it worked out okay in the end." Dr. Cleafe entered the observation room carrying a tablet with test results. The small blue alien looked confused as she studied the readings. "Commander, the human's brain chemistry shows no signs of fear response," she reported. "No elevated stress hormones, no increased adrenaline production, no fight-or-flight reactions. It is as if he is incapable of fear." "Run the deep phobia protocols." Vextar ordered. Kethmore activated the ship's most advanced psychological testing system. The room filled with scenarios designed to trigger primitive fears that existed in all known intelligent life. Darkness with unknown sounds, being trapped in small spaces, falling from great heights, being hunted by something faster and stronger. Jake experienced each scenario with the same calm attention he had given everything else. When the room showed him being stalked by an invisible predator, he looked around curiously and asked if the creature was using some kind of camouflage technology. When he was trapped in a shrinking box, he commented that it was an interesting puzzle and wondered if there was a way to solve it. After 2 hours of testing, Kethmore stopped the programs and sat in silence. In his professional opinion, Jake Murphy was either completely insane or represented something entirely new in terms of psychological development I do not understand, the alien psychologist said. Finally, fear is the foundation of survival. Without fear, a being cannot assess danger or respond appropriately to threats. Jake nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense from your perspective. But humans developed a bit differently, I think." "How so?" "Well, from what I understand about human evolution, we didn't survive by running away from dangerous things," Jake explained. "We survived by figuring out how to deal with them. If there was a predator that was faster than us, we invented tools to hunt it. If there was bad weather, we built shelters. If there was a disease, we developed medicine." He paused to think about how to explain it better. "I guess you could say that instead of evolving fear, we evolved curiosity. When humans see something unknown or dangerous, our first instinct isn't to run away. It's to understand what we're dealing with so we can figure out how to handle it." Amanda felt a chill run down her spine as she listened to Jake's explanation. She had never thought about her own species that way, but it made perfect sense. Humans had spread across the galaxy not because they were fearless, but because they treated every new challenge as a problem to solve rather than a threat to flee from. In the psychology lab, Thrax had been hiding behind a cabinet, but now the massive creature crept closer to get a better look at Jake. The beast's red eyes studied the human with something that might have been respect mixed with confusion. "Your companion seems to be getting used to me," Jake observed. Kethmore looked at his long-time research partner. "Thrax has been with me for 10 years. He has faced down pirates, soldiers, and even rogue AI constructs without hesitation. But he has never encountered a being that simply does not fear." "Maybe that's what's bothering him," Jake suggested. "He's probably trying to figure out what I am since I don't react the way other creatures do." Engineer Lisa Campbell entered the psychology lab at that moment carrying a maintenance report. She was one of the few other humans aboard the Starweaver, and Amanda had been curious to see how she would react to Jake. "Hey there," Lisa said to Jake with a friendly smile. "I heard we picked up another human. I'm Lisa. Jake Murphy," he replied, standing up to shake her hand. "Nice to meet you, Lisa," Amanda called through the intercom. "Can you come to the observation room for a moment?" A few minutes later, Lisa joined them and Amanda explained what they had discovered about Jake's complete lack of fear response. "Oh, that," Lisa said. "Yeah, that's pretty normal for humans." The entire alien crew stared at her in silence. "Normal," Vextar repeated. "Sure," Lisa continued. "I mean, Jake might be a little more calm than most people, but humans in general don't really do the fear thing the way other species do. We're more of a figure-it-out-as-we-go kind of people." Kethmore's 3 eyes opened wide. "You mean all humans are like this?" "More or less," Lisa said. "Some people are more nervous than others, but even our most anxious individuals will usually try to solve a problem rather than just panic about it." Amanda realized that this conversation was about to change everything the galactic community thought it knew about humanity. If humans truly were immune to the kind of fear that controlled other species, then they represented something unprecedented in galactic civilization. Back in the psychology lab, Jake had sat back down and Thrax had finally worked up the courage to approach him directly. The massive predator sniffed at Jake's hand cautiously, then seemed to decide he was safe. Within minutes, the supposedly fierce hunting beast was lying next to Jake's chair like an oversized pet. "I think your friend has decided I'm okay after all," Jake said as he scratched behind Thrax's ears. The galactic research vessel Starweaver drifted through the cold darkness of space near the edge of known territory when its sensors picked up something unusual. Dr. Amanda Price looked up from her workstation where she had been studying alien plant samples and walked over to the main display screen. Commander Vextar stood there with his 6 arms crossed over his chest while his large yellow eyes studied the readings. "What do you make of it, Amanda?" the Zephyrian asked in his clicking voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. Amanda pushed her brown hair behind her ear and squinted at the screen. The sensors showed a small ship floating dead in space, with no power signature and no life signs coming from its systems. But there was something else that made her heart beat faster. The design was human. "That looks like one of our exploration vessels," she said quietly. "The New Horizons-class ships that Earth sent out about 5 years ago." Vextar turned his large head toward her, and his face tentacles moved in what she had learned was curiosity. "Your species has ships this far out." "They shouldn't," Amanda replied. "The last reports we got said all the deep space missions had been called back after the Korath attacks near the outer colonies. Behind them, the ship's science officer, Cleef, made a soft whistling sound that meant concern. The small blue alien rarely spoke, but when she did, everyone listened. "Commander, the ship appears to be the human vessel New Horizons. It has been drifting for approximately 3 standard days. Internal atmosphere is critically low." Vexitar's companion beast, Thrax, lifted its massive head from where it had been. sleeping near the captain's chair. The creature looked like a cross between a tiger and a lizard, with 6 powerful legs and teeth that could bite through metal. Its red eyes glowed as it sensed something that made it uncomfortable. The beast had never shown fear of anything in all the years Amanda had known it, but now it whined softly and pressed itself against the far wall. "Prepare a boarding party," Vextar commanded. "Amanda, you will come with me to examine any humans we find. Cleef, monitor life signs, and be ready to provide medical support." 20 minutes later, Amanda floated through the airlock into the New Horizons, wearing her environmental suit. The ship was cold and dark, with only emergency lighting casting red shadows on the walls. Her breath formed small clouds inside her helmet as she followed Vextar and 2 other crew members down the main corridor. They found the ship's records. First, the New Horizons had suffered a complete engine failure 3 days ago while investigating an unusual energy reading. The crew of 12 had evacuated in the escape pods, but the pod signals had been lost in a magnetic storm. Only 1 person had stayed behind. "Life signs are coming from the library section." Cleef's voice crackled through their communicators. "1 human male. Heart rate and breathing are stable, but oxygen levels in that section are down to 8%. Amanda felt her chest tighten. No one could remain calm with oxygen that low. The human should be unconscious or dead by now. They moved quickly through the ship's corridors until they reached the library door. Vextar pressed the manual release and the door slid open with a grinding sound inside. They found Captain Jake Murphy sitting in a comfortable chair reading a paperback book. He looked up when they entered and smiled as if he was greeting friends who had dropped by for coffee. His short black hair was messy and he had not shaved in several days, but his green eyes were clear and alert. "Well, hello there," Jake said in a calm voice. "I was wondering if someone might show up eventually." Amanda stared at him through her helmet visor. The man was sitting in a room with barely enough oxygen to keep a mouse alive, and he looked completely relaxed. Behind her, she heard Vexatar make a low, growling sound that meant he was confused or disturbed. "Sir, you need to come with us immediately," Amanda said. "The oxygen in this section is critically low." Jake nodded and closed his book after carefully, marking his place with a piece of paper. "That makes sense," he said. "I did notice it was getting a bit stuffy in here, but I figured there wasn't much point in worrying about it." He stood up slowly and stretched like someone getting up from a nap. Amanda watched in amazement as the man showed no signs of oxygen deprivation. No confusion, no panic, no rapid breathing. He acted like he was taking a walk in the park. "How long have you been in here?" Vextar asked in his clicking voice. Jake thought for a moment. "About 6 hours, I think. Maybe 7. Hard to tell without windows." He picked up his book and a small bag from beside his chair. "I hope you don't mind me bringing these along. Not much else to do during travel." As they made their way back to the airlock, Amanda kept looking, back at Jake. The human walked steadily behind them with his hands in his pockets like he was out for an evening stroll. When they reached the Star Weaver and removed their environmental suits, Jake thanked them politely and asked if there was somewhere he could get a cup of coffee. Thrax had been waiting near the airlock, but when Jake stepped onto the ship, the massive Predator let out a sound Amanda had never heard before. It was almost like a whimper. The beast that had never backed down from anything, including armed pirates and angry space whales, pressed itself against the wall and refused to look at Jake. "Interesting pet," Jake said, noticing the creature. "What kind of animal is it?" "Thrax is not a pet," Vextar said with some offense in his voice. "He is a Zephyrian hunting beast bred for courage and strength. He has never shown fear of any living thing. Jake looked at the cowering animal with genuine curiosity. Really? Well, maybe he's just having a bad day. Sometimes animals get moody. Dr. Cleef ran her scanners over Jake while he sat in the medical bay. Her large blue eyes kept blinking in confusion as she read the results. Commander. She said to Vextar, "The human's vital signs are completely normal. No stress indicators, no elevated heart rate, no chemical markers that would suggest recent trauma or fear response." "That's impossible," Vextar replied. His ship was dying around him. He should show some psychological impact. Jake overheard their conversation from where he sat on the medical table. "Oh, the ship thing," he said. "Yeah, that was unfortunate. But these things happen when you're exploring space. Either someone finds you, or they don't. Not much sense in getting worked up about it." Amanda sat down across from him. "Jake, weren't you afraid?" He thought about her question seriously. Afraid of what exactly? Of dying alone in space. "Well, I wasn't alone," Jake said. "I had my book, and I've always wanted to finish reading the complete works of Mark Twain. Seemed like as good a time as any." Vextar's face tentacles moved rapidly, which Amanda knew meant he was either very angry or very confused. Human, your entire species confuses.
Me?
Any rational being would have sent distress signals or at least shown some emotional response to near death. Jake shrugged. "I figured if my communications were working, someone would have heard them by now. Since no one answered, I assumed they weren't working. As for the near-death thing, well, that's just life, isn't it? Could happen to anyone at any time." The Thrax let out another whimpering sound from where it hid behind a supply crate. Jake looked in its direction with mild interest. "Is your friend okay over there?" "He is responding to something about you that he finds threatening," Vextar said, "but I cannot understand what." "Huh." Jake said, "Well, I hope he feels better soon." Amanda realized she was witnessing something that would change everything. The galaxy thought it knew about humans.